Dane, we all know what week it is. It's a holiday that I get super excited for every year. But I'm gonna try to spin the topical conversation into something that pertains to us here at Building the Beast. So forget about actual Thanksgiving dinner for a second. When it's Friday afternoon and you're settling in to watch the Egg Bowl or whatever else is on, Iowa, Nebraska, whatever game piques your interest on Black Friday, what leftover are you beelining for? Like, what's your favorite thing to make a plate of on the day after Thanksgiving when you're watching football?
So every Friday after Thanksgiving, we go and get the Christmas tree that morning. That
Classic Americana. I'm not
yes,
surprised to hear that about you, for the record.
yes, it's kids love it. It's obviously not really worried about work Friday morning. Just kind of go out there, cut down the tree. Throw it in the back of the truck, bring it home, and get that all set up. And then, yeah, leftovers. I mean, I'm not going to say it's better than Thanksgiving because that'd be disingenuous, but it's still pretty high up there. I think a good turkey sandwich, and then with mashed potatoes and corn mixed together, like as a side, to me, like that's I don't know if I can point to one thing, but that as a meal, as like a Friday lunch, it is perfect. And with gravy, obviously too. So I don't know, but what about you? What is your go to the day after?
I love the actual meal. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
And sometimes, like, my family will mix it up, and like, we've done like prime rib on Thanksgiving before, but typically you do like a turkey, and then we'll do a small ham. And
Mm.
on Friday, when I'm sitting down for football, I'm going to make a turkey sandwich and throw a slice of ham into the turkey sandwich, some gravy, and then this is going to sound uncouth, but some yellow mustard in the mix as well. And then
Huh.
the only thing better than a deviled egg the day you make it is a deviled egg that's been sitting in the fridge overnight. And I'm going to probably eat like 5 of those over the course of the day. It's going to be fantastic. Not a
I
fan,
can't
that's
do those.
okay.
I can't do
Uh,
those. Are there any unique like Louisiana things that you guys bring to the table for Thanksgiving?
Um, so people in Louisiana, you might make like a like Melaton casserole for me.
That's a
I
new
mean,
word.
for me, the big thing that I do, and I'll probably do it this year, is like I'll use the turkey carcass to make a gumbo like the over the
Mm,
weekend. That's
nice.
not really like on Thanksgiving Day, but yeah, you do that like on Saturday, which this all ties into okay, week 1 is really special in college football because we're getting football back and there's usually a lot of good matchups, teams schedule good non-conference games. I really think rivalry week is the best week of the year after that, Dane, other than just the excitement of getting football back. For all the reasons we just outlined, like the playoff stakes are obvious, the Heisman stakes are obvious. It's Thanksgiving weekend, so you got your friends and family together. Maybe you've got a tradition of going, if you're one of these teams that plays on Black Friday, or if you're a team that used to play on Thanksgiving, unfortunately, that doesn't really happen anymore. Maybe you go with your family to that game, or you just eat leftovers and sit around the house with your family all weekend watching these high stakes college football games. It is absolutely one of the best weekends of the college football season. And for our purposes, I think it's fantastic because you got a lot of high stakes games, and in this new era of college football, I do think this is a last opportunity to watch a lot of big time prospects play a meaningful game. Guys sitting out of bowl games is nowhere near as uncommon as it used to be. Some of the guys we're going to talk about today aren't even teams that are bowl eligible. So this is a last chance to get a look at quite a few guys that we think very highly of. So for all of those reasons, I'm way in on this weekend. And I know, like I said, the NFL kind of owns Thanksgiving Day these days, but Thanksgiving weekend it's a special moment in college football every year.
Oh, no doubt. And I don't like, especially with Texas A&M back in the fold. Like it feels like that's very a big part of what happens on Thanksgiving weekend. But yeah, and it feels like yesterday we were just talking about week 1 and a loaded slate and Texas, Ohio State and Clemson, LSU. And here we are. This will be the final time we get to see some of these prospects. So yeah, we have plenty of rivalries to talk about. Excited to jump in.
So here's what we're going to do if you're listening to this during your holiday weekend. There's 2 big days in college football this weekend. Got a lot of good games on Friday. We're going to do the big Friday games at the top of the show, and then we'll move on to Saturday and we'll work our way from there. So let's start with Friday, which is kind of the new Thanksgiving day in this rivalry weekend. And there are several games worth getting excited about here, man, but if I wasn't already geeked about Texas A&M being a rivalry once again, it's so good this year with A&M being in unprecedented territory. I mean, they look like a lock for the college football playoff, but very much in the mix for a bye week, very much in the mix to play in the SEC championship, which they have not done as a member of the SEC as of yet. And Texas, I guess you would call it a disappointing year relative to starting the season ranked number 1, but still at least slightly mathematically alive for the playoff. And you get a chance to play spoiler to the team that you hate more than anybody else. So the storylines abound. And on top of that, there is so much NFL talent in this game. I'm really looking forward to this on Friday night.
And you and I have unique relationships to both fan bases, I think, because we were both Texas transplants for a decade or so. And so,
Yeah, I have so much more appreciation for this than I
yeah,
used to, right? Like it
yeah.
means a lot more to me having lived in Dallas and you as well.
And because we got to know people on both sides. There's definitely crazy on both sides. There's a lot of passion on both sides. I mean, how many times has A&M been favored in Austin? I can't imagine it's happened very often. So the fact that that's what the case is this year makes for some pretty interesting storylines, like you said. And then I really think that this game comes down to the Texas A&M defensive line versus the Longhorns offensive line. We've talked a lot about Cashius Howell, edge rusher for the Aggies, one of the biggest risers in the 2026 NFL draft. I want to see him win in more ways besides just high side and speed to the corner, but he has a presence to him. Just the wiring that he plays with, it's undeniable. And so I cannot wait to see his burst and bend up against Texas left tackle Trevor Goosby, who is high cut, a little rigid, but he's long and he's strong. And he can end the fight pretty quickly once he gets his hands on rushers. But it's not easy to get your hands on Howell. So this is going to be a great test for both of these guys. I mean, it sounds like Goosby, who's an underclassman, it sounds like he's going to be back. His younger brother, big time basketball recruit, he just committed to Texas over Duke and some other schools I think last week. So that's a part of his decision making, but he's definitely a player to know, if not for this class, definitely for 2027.
That is such a good point. And I wanted to talk about Goosby in particular, really, because I mean we've talked a lot about A&M over the course of the year. We know about Cassius Howell, we know about Will Lee. We've talked a little bit about Taurean York, their Mike linebacker, and the guys on their offensive line. We haven't after it became pretty obvious. I mean, we kind of guessed that Arch Manning wasn't going to come out anyway, but he also didn't start his season playing like he even should. And I feel like Texas has kind of been relegated from an NFL prospect standpoint ever since then. But I wanted to talk about Goosby because he is still a guy that most people think of as being on the short list of better offensive tackles. Anthony Hill, the linebacker in Texas, is another guy worth mentioning. And I think that's a fantastic point about his brother. And it goes back to, it's a theme for the show where it's just not as easy to guess what a guy's going to do with his NFL future as it used to be, because staying in college is a lucrative decision on its own now. But what do you think about Goosby in general and the season that he's had, understanding that maybe this is a guy that we're still talking about next season, but overall, like as a prospect, where do you think things stand?
Big shoes to fill, coming in and replacing Kelvin Banks, who was a top 10 pick last year. And you see the youth and the inexperience at times, But like I said, he's big, he's long, and he's strong. And so not the twitchiest in terms of the reaction quickness. And that could be an issue against a guy like Howell, where it's speed, speed, speed. He's going to attack you. And if he can get inside Goosby, drive him backwards, knock him off balance, like that's something that could be an issue and something that's a storyline in this game. Because I mean, you look at uh, the pressure numbers. Arch Manning has been pressured the fourth most of any quarterback in college football this year. But he has a relatively low pressure to sack rate, which I think is a credit to him and his mobility. But this Texas offensive line has not been a strength so far this season. And so what can they do against that Aggies defensive line? And Goosby's a big part of it because he looks like an NFL player, a future NFL player. It's just, could he benefit from another year in college? There's no doubt about it. So, but he might be one of those guys that at least kicks the tires and sees, all right, what's my projection right now? And what is the feedback that scouts are saying? Because he has a pro future. There's no doubt about that.
I'm thinking about this matchup and going back to the Texas loss to Florida in the Swamp. And we can make plenty of valid criticism about Arch Manning over the course of this season. In that game, I was like, well, my God, what do you want the kid to do, man? Like, he hasn't been playing college football that long, and he is just under siege from this Florida front. And I'm curious to see in another big test at the end of the year, because it's been some time since that game, how does this offensive line meet the moment? And having Howell there, it's such a fun barometer where I'm sure we're going to debate Howell's arm length and what does that mean for his ceiling? Will somebody be willing to draft him in the first round? Wherever he winds up falling, I know as somebody just watching on TV that I can zero in on Howell and be like, all right, how are they holding up against this guy? Because if it's going well, then that can sort of change your perception of some of these Texas offensive linemen. And in particular, Goosby. I mean, if you play a great game against a talent like that, I don't know if it sways your decision as it pertains to the NFL, especially if your little brother's coming to campus. But it's the type of thing that can A, gain a lot of attention, and B, build your confidence a lot for that type of decision.
Well, and Howell's a guy that should have success against him. When you compare their skill sets and their strengths and weaknesses, Howell's a guy that could be a problem. So if Goosby has a productive game, sure, yeah, absolutely, that should factor into what his future is going to be. But I also want to give shout out to the rest of that A&M defensive line, especially on the interior. Albert Regis and Tyler Onyedim, both defensive tackles, both have draftable grades from scouts, and they've been kind of the unsung heroes of this A&M defense. The stat sheet's not going to blow you away. When you watch A&M games on Saturday, you don't hear their names called all that much. But Onyedim is a Iowa State transfer. He's been terrific this year. He has a chance to go in the mid rounds. Regis has been in the program for like 5 years now. He's got a fun story. I mean, he's the only member of his family who was born in the U.S. and he was a nationally ranked esports video game player growing up. Like, he has an interesting background, but he's also been a really good player. So I think he's going to get drafted as well. And like I said, these guys won't light up the stat sheet, and you might not hear their names once against Texas. But I do think how they perform is a big part of the success of not only putting heat on Arch Manning, but also shutting down the run game, which has been really a volatile unit for the Longhorns this year in terms of their offensive success.
We said it a few weeks back when we really highlighted A&M, but their roster just looks like it's going to have quite a few draft picks. And I don't know, we'll see who all comes out this year and what that looks like. I don't think you can put a number on it until we know who's even part of the draft class. But over the next 2 years, I'll say, just feels like there's going to be a lot of Aggies drafted, which not surprising with just how complete this team has looked over the course of the season.
I mean, yeah.
And we haven't even talked about the A&M offense
line.
in this. I mean, yeah, the offensive line
That's
has several dudes. The receivers are great. The tight end is good. He was right in front of me a minute ago, Nate Borkerker. Like, there are players all over this roster. One last thing I wanted to hit on, I mentioned it. The linebackers in this game, I mean, we've talked about the
Mm.
linebacker class this year being particularly fun. Where do you think these guys stand up between York for A&M and then like as I mentioned, Anthony Hill for Texas?
Yeah, I mean, Hill's really polarizing, I think, in terms of where fans have him and then where scouts see him as more of a third or fourth round guy. Fans think he's a top 10 pick. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there. The truth is he's probably somewhere in the middle, somewhere in that, I don't know, mid second, late second range. There's a lot to like about him. He's athletic. He can work downhill. I don't really trust him in coverage, but I mean, there's a lot to like about his play style and the way he can make an impact. And this will be, with the way the Aggies have been running the football, this will be a big. And I know Hill's been banged up this month, and so he won't be at 100%, but Texas will need him playing at his normal level in order to stop or at least limit this Aggies offense. We'll see if he can do it. York is a little bit undersized, but he's just a fun player because he's so smart. He's so instinctive. His reads, he's so quick to the ball because he anticipates. He understands, okay, this is what the offense is trying to do. I'm going to get a head start. And so when you watch linebacker play, a lot of times it's kind of like running backs. Like after 10 plays, 15 plays, you should be able to tell pretty quickly, okay, this running back has vision or he doesn't. He has moves or he doesn't. It's kind of the same thing with linebacker, because the action's happening right there in front of you, and it's a lot of times in the box where you have to make quick decisions about what angle you're taking, how you're going to attack the block, the way you're going to attack the football. So York has been again a little bit undersized, but he has, I think, the instincts and the awareness that are going to carry well to the next level.
I might say something that you as an Ohio guy don't appreciate here, but between the talent on display, the stakes, particularly for Texas A&M, and this is not normal territory for them. Arch Manning is still a huge draw, even if he's not part of this quarterback class. The fact that Texas is the underdog trying to play spoiler in a series that they have historically dominated, and the passion and I would say hatred that is often part of this rivalry. I think this is the game of the weekend for me, even over the one that we're going to talk about on Saturday. I'd like, if I was going to pick one game to be seated for, it might be this one with Ohio State, Michigan as a very close second.
Oh, I totally get that. And they're kind of similar where A&M could lose, they're still going to the playoff. Now they won't win the SEC, but they're still going to the playoff. Ohio State, if they lose, they're not going to win the Big Ten. They're still going to the playoff. Whereas with Texas and Michigan, they've got it. Michigan, if they win, good chance they're going to get into the playoff. Texas, that probably needs some more help to actually get to the playoff. It seems like the odds might be stacked against them, but a win over a top 3 team in Texas A&M, that would go a long way, and it would be tough to keep them out. So totally get that. But yeah, both these games are going to be must watch, and it feels like the stakes are high, which is, big for college football, but also big for evaluation purposes. When the stage is bigger, the lights are brighter, that's when you want to see these guys play at their best. And so cannot wait to watch these prospects and see how they perform.
We will get into that game in Ann Arbor in a little bit, but let's stick with Friday quickly. There are several other good games on the docket. Friday afternoon, maybe it loses a little bit of luster after Georgia Tech's loss to Pitt last week, but I mean, Georgia Tech last year was one of the games of the entire college football season. We know Georgia's roster loaded with NFL talent, plenty of opportunity to watch them. Is there anything else from this matchup that strikes your fancy? One more opportunity to see Haynes King throw himself around like a crash test dummy for 3.5 hours?
Yeah, I mean, Georgia Tech has some intriguing guys, but I wouldn't call any of them lock, no doubt about it, draft picks. And that's kind of how scouts feel. I think Keelan Rutledge at guard has a good chance to be drafted. And then we'll see with Haynes King. He doesn't have a lot of draftable grades out there, but there's just no question this guy's toughness. And if he's able to get a win in this rivalry, in this type of game, that would go a long way to kind of turning some of the doubters into believers. But so Rutledge at right guard going up against Kristen Miller and that Georgia defensive line. Can't wait to watch that. And then for the Georgia offense, if I'm going to pick one player to watch, Georgia needs to protect Gunnar Stockton for this in this game if they're going to win. Left tackle Monroe Freeling is one of the more underrated draft eligible tackles. He's a junior. He's got only, I think, 15 starts under his belt. So I don't know that he's going to declare. I think he could really benefit with another year in Athens. But if he does, he's going top 100. He's big. He's athletic. He's got thudding hands, good recovery skills. I don't hear his name a ton. Scouts kind of like him. And I think he'll have an NFL decision make after this year.
I think we've mentioned Zachariah Branch at times this year having a nice season for the Dogs. I think that's a name worth mentioning. I don't think we need to talk about CJ Allen at this point, but I am excited to see him in a big spot just because I like watching him play football. I think I'm starting to elevate him to pet cat status, which is like that's not like an interesting take. He's a really good player. Everybody's gonna like CJ Allen, but if your team is in need of a linebacker, keep an eye on CJ Allen for Georgia on Friday afternoon. Couple more, mainly Jordyn Tyson for Arizona State. He came back from his hamstring injury against Colorado last week. Arizona State beats Colorado pretty handily, and they are mathematically alive to get back to the Big 12 title game. They need some help, but they can do it. So I would imagine we're going to get to see Jordyn Tyson in a big spot in a rivalry game against Arizona on Friday night with a chance to reach the Big 12 title game. And if not, maybe this is his last big opportunity to put some wide receiver one tape on, out there before declaring for the draft. Hopefully he's fully healthy and ready to do it.
Yeah, he had only 2 catches against Colorado, but it was just awesome to see him back out there. There was a hamstring injury that really kind of held him down for 4 weeks or so. In this game, Trayden Stukes, he plays primarily as a nickel for Arizona. So I don't know how many times we'll actually see him lined up against Jordyn Tyson. But Stukes is a draftable guy, and great story too. Former walk-on, late bloomers, really turned himself into a prospect. But anytime we get to see Tyson versus Stukes, that's going to be a must-see for NFL scouts. And like you said, this could be the last time we see Jordyn Tyson on a college field. And so one more last chance to really evaluate him. Because he's in the running for wide receiver one. He was wide receiver one preseason for me. That's where he was at the midseason. And, we'll see if he can finish that way with what he does in this game.
I really enjoyed after that Colorado game. Tyson spoke with reporters and, basically he was asked about like, hey, you're going to be a high draft pick and you don't need to be out here if you're fighting through an injury and Arizona State's lost a few games. Why come back? And he's just like, yeah, I'm part of a team. You got to love your neighbor as you love yourself, love your teammates as you love yourself. And it's the type of thing, at the risk of sounding sappy, like I think that registers with scouts and NFL evaluators where like the potential top receiver in this draft coming off of an injury is out there trying to help Arizona State get back to the Big 12 title game. I do think that stuff registers.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's funny. So it was about a month ago now. Buddy asked me to go to the Cavs game with him, and we were like 5 rows from the floor, great seats. And this dude for the Cavs throws down this dunk and just unbelievable athleticism. And I have a bad habit when I go to any type of sporting event that's not NFL or football. I can't help but look at these guys and be like, oh man, what a safety that guy would be, or what this guy would be. Holy cow. And I was like, this Tyson would be a great tight end. And I look it up and he's Jordyn Tyson's older brother. Okay, that makes sense. Because it would run in the family that these guys are pretty good in terms of size and catching the ball. So yeah, it's a pretty athletic family.
And later this spring, you will be able to read about it in Dane's bio about Jordyn Tyson at the top of this receiver class. That's quite literally why we call it Building the Beast right there. One last Friday game. It's not the sexiest matchup, but also on Friday in the morning, Utah is traveling to Lawrence to play Kansas. They're a 2-touchdown road favorite. I wanted to highlight this specifically. Again, Utah is also mathematically alive to play in the Big 12 title game, and they're mathematically part of the playoff conversation. It seems like they need a lot of help. I'm going to step out on a limb and say it would be pretty surprising if they get the breaks that they need. So this could be potentially the last meaningful game or the last game we see from their offensive tackles. Caleb Lomu, well, excuse me, Spence. Let's start with Spencer Fano because he got hurt against Kansas State. Not even sure if he's going to play in this game. So I'm curious about that. And then Caleb Lomu, I wanted to highlight this, Dane. He's a redshirt sophomore, and Utah put him in the senior day graphic as a way of saying, like, thanks to our seniors last weekend against Kansas State. So it kind of sounds like Utah is aware both of these guys are going to be gone. So this is a big opportunity to watch two of the bigger tackle names in the class.
Yeah, we're recording this Tuesday afternoon. As of now, no word on Fano and his availability for this game. He got rolled up against Kansas State. Hopefully, it's not long term. I think he's the best chance at this draft having a tackle go top 10 overall. But at left tackle, yeah, Caleb Lomu. I mean, we've seen it before where guys have walked or been included in the senior day stuff, but then gone back to school. So I wouldn't say that it's you know, tells us definitively anything except for that he's probably undecided at this point. But he's fascinating because he's one of the more polarizing prospects. I think in this, at least among scouts, some have given him day 2 grades, second, third round. Other scouts, area scouts, think he's a day 3 guy, 4th round, 5th round. There's no doubt about his feet, his recovery ability, but I think it's the marginal play strength that really throws evaluators off. That's the hang up for guys that just can't get on board with him early. And he was really up and down against Texas Tech at midseason, and then he's played well since. But I don't know. You look at that Big 12 schedule, and it's like, all right, well, what pass rushers has he really faced? So it's going to be really interesting with Lomu. He's a redshirt sophomore, could really use another year of just physical development and getting better. But if he comes out, I still think he'll be probably a top 50 player because tackles always get pushed up, and his upside is awesome. So I think that there's just a lot of opinions all over the place. That he is not a definite top 10 guy, top 20 guy, first rounder, but I think there's enough optimism from him from some scouts that will end up going top 50. But that is definitely not the consensus when you talk to scouts around the league.
Do you think we could do a whole offseason show about this, but other than quarterback, it feels like offensive tackle is the position where scarcity of ability at the position can inflate your draft stock. And yeah, maybe you are a top 50 guy, or maybe you're a third round pick, but you could see yourself go a lot higher because look around the NFL. It's obvious the need is there. And if you think you can get a guy with high upside who's still young and needs to do some developing, that's worth drafting him a round or even 2 rounds early. It feels like outside of quarterback, which we've known that forever, it feels like that is kind of a theme at the offensive tackle position.
You could look every single draft, and there will at least be 1, 2, 3, maybe more tackles that you can point to and say, "Oh yeah, he went around early," or "Oh yeah, that he went much earlier than most thought because this team needed a tackle, and they knew they could not wait till the next round to get one, or they couldn't trade back and get him." I'm thinking, Austin Jackson when the Dolphins took him first round. Anton Harrison, Jaguars took him first round. I mean, that's just off the top of my head. There are plenty of examples. So I think you're absolutely right. Aside from quarterback, offensive tackle, because there's so many teams that need these guys. If you show even the smallest foundation of a future starter, teams are going to clutch to that and say, all right, we can coach up the rest. And so, yeah, Lomu will be interesting because, again, I think he needs more physical development. There's a lot to like about him. but it's just a little bit of a faith-based projection because he does need more work.
Something to watch. And again, this game is it's 11 a.m. Central on Friday. So what else are you doing on Black Friday? Get home from getting the tree, or if you're doing shopping in the morning, get home, scout some offensive tackles before all the craziness of the NFL game and everything else gets started. I hope I sold you on it because I'll be watching. All right, that does it for the Friday games. We're going to take a quick break and we'll come back and dive into Saturday.
This episode of the Athletic Football Show is brought to you by our friends at Facebook. You know, every year around this time, there's that one night when everyone's back in town, Thanksgiving Eve. You swing by your old bar, see some familiar faces, maybe even reconnect with an old teammate you haven't talked to in years. That's what Facebook's all about, those little connections that end up meaning a lot. Maybe it's someone posting in your high school alumni group saying they're home for the holidays. Or maybe you find out about a local turkey trot where you dress up with family through a Facebook event. Even hopping on Marketplace to grab something to spice up your home ahead of Thanksgiving can spark a new friendship. This season, Facebook's reminding us that a little connection goes a long way. So if you're heading home, hop on Facebook, check out your group's events Marketplace, and see who you might reconnect with. Let's reconnect this holiday season with Facebook.
All right, Dane, let's talk about it. Let's get the big one out of the way, because on Saturday at 11 a.m. Central, Ohio State, as a 9.5-point favorite, goes into Ann Arbor. Playoff expectations, chance at a national title. I mean, they're going to make the playoff either way, but an undefeated season. And my whole point is, does any of this sound familiar? Feels like the last 3 Ohio State seasons. And surely this will be the Ohio State team that doesn't let Michigan be the hiccup in their year.
On paper, Ohio State, clearly the more talented team. They could have more top 50 draft picks in April than Michigan will have guys picked, period, in the draft in 2026. But the more talented team does not consistently win this matchup. That's what history has told us. It's part of what makes this, in my opinion, the greatest rivalry in sports. But I think that this is the type of game where I think these teams match up well with kind of the strengths and where you can get the other team. And so this is a matchup where Ohio State needs Arvell Reese and his versatile front seven talent to take over the game and play like the number one player in the draft. Michigan has a top 10 ranked offense, or top 10 ranked rushing offense. And Bryce Underwood's part of that. The dual threat ability that can really make a difference in a game like this. And so I'm guessing we're going to see Reese spying Underwood most of the game, but then also mix in a few of those timely blitzes just to try and get that offense off schedule. And really, I think this is a great test for all of Ohio State's defensive prospects. Kayden McDonald at the nose, he's been phenomenal this year. So him resetting the line of scrimmage, creating those 10-car pileups in the middle, because we know Michigan wants to run the ball. Sonny Styles playing well in space. Caleb Downs playing top down and making plays. This Michigan, they're without Justice Haynes, the really talented running back, who might be their top draft pick next year. I think he'll probably go somewhere third round in that range. But he's going to be out. But they still have running backs behind him that are really talented. Michigan tight end Marlin Klein has not been the weapon that scouts expected him to be this year, but maybe this could be, somewhat of a breakout game for him. So watching this Ohio State defense and seeing what they can do to stop a Michigan offense that is a little more one-dimensional than ideally you want, but they're pretty good on that side of the ball where they can still have success.
Let me take off my draft hat for a sec and put on my college football fan hat. Do my best impression of a Paul Feinbaum caller. Is this the best opponent Ohio State has faced since the season opener? I guess what I'm trying to has Ohio State played anybody, Paul? They ain't played nobody. Is this our best look? And I got a ton of respect for the amount of talent on Ohio State's roster. But I do think this represents, and ironically, sure, Michigan feels like a very two-dimensional football team, but they were a two-dimensional football team last year and they beat Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is fair to look at Ohio State's schedule, and maybe that's not all their fault. I mean, the Big Ten is enormous. It's not their fault that they cycled away from Oregon and they didn't play Indiana in the regular season this year. But I know Penn State has a ton of talent on their roster. I mean, if you want to try to sell me on Illinois, you can. But yeah, like this feels like the truest test for this team since all the way back in week 1, or do you think I'm off base with that?
No, I think that's fair. Obviously, Texas in the opener, but with a very young, inexperienced team that is better now than what they were when they went to Columbus in the opener. I think that's fair. You could make the argument that Michigan is the best team that they have faced up to this point. So that's another thing to add to this team. Now, but I will say that while I think that's true, Ohio State has dominated everybody that they've played.
That's fair.
They lead the college football in scoring defense. They're giving up, I think, 7.6 points per game. No other team in college football is below 11.5 points per game. So they are completely dominating whoever they're playing. And going to Washington is not easy. But again, we're talking about they went to Illinois, but that's not exactly. I think it's different than what we're going to see in this game. But I think that's also, it's fair to point out too, because Julian Sayin, we have to remember, he's a sophomore. He is a first-year starter and a guy who, the poise is something that you really like about him. And he did well at Washington, at Illinois, but he's only had like 4 road tests up to this point. So this will be his 5th, and this will be a big one. Going to Ann Arbor with over 100,000 people, it's something you don't experience until you're actually out there trying to complete a pass, especially because, like I said at the top, Michigan, I think, is uniquely suited to have success against this Ohio State offense because they have 2 pass rushers that can get after the quarterback. Derrick Moore, Jaishawn Barham, 2 Maryland kids who have been playing some of their best football now as seniors. Moore has 9.5 sacks. That's top 10 nationally. 6'3", 265 pounds, playing with a lot more violence this year. And then Barham, who he started the year as an off-ball linebacker, but the strength of his game is just speed. And so they've been working him into more of an edge role over the second half of the year. And it's fit him because it's less reading and more attacking. And that's what he does best. So Julian Sayin, he's been sacked, I think, 8 times this year. And obviously that's not a lot. That's, I think, top 10 in college football in terms of least number of times sacked. It'll be a much tougher test for Ohio State's offensive line and for Sayin to get the ball up and out, show that mobility a little bit. And again, that poise is something that really is unique to him for such a young player, but this is a little bit of a different animal.
It's very dangerous trying to predict injury stuff with college football, especially on a Tuesday afternoon, but it does sound in Columbus like Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate are trending toward playing in this game. So
Smith said he's playing, so that's a good sign at least. And it sounds like
Jeremiah said it himself, whereas Carnell Tate, you're kind of leaning more on what Ryan Day is saying about this.
And Smith, it sounds like it's more of a pain tolerance issue. So having him back was obviously a huge deal. But yeah, will Carnell Tate play? He's missed, I think, the last 3 games. It sounds like it's not just a pain tolerance issue, but something where you have to worry about losing him long term, not just for Big Ten championship game playoffs, but into the spring. And he's got an NFL career to think of too, and so you don't want to necessarily put him in harm's way where you almost have to protect him from himself. So having Smith back would be great, but having Tate back really opens up everything for that offense. And I mean, selfishly, I just enjoy scouting Tate. And so I want to see him out there so we can really see this team at full health and full speed, but it very much up in the air at this point midweek.
It's so gross. I was going to ask you about other Buckeyes we should highlight because, like, we've talked plenty about Carnell Tate, and obviously Arvell, Reese, and Sonny Styles, and I like you just pull up there too deep, and I feel like you could talk about almost anybody, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Is there anybody else we should highlight other than like the obvious candidates? Like, have we talked about Davison Igbinosun at all? Like how do you
Why
feel
not
about?
enough?
Yeah, how do you feel about some of the other guys on the Kayden McDonald, Kenyatta Jackson? I mean, if you're looking at defensive prospects in this draft, we've talked about Caden Curry. Like if you're looking at defensive prospects in this draft, there's almost nobody you could watch on Ohio State's defense that isn't gonna factor into this conversation at some point.
Yeah, I mean, just going over it in my head, I think every single, it might not be this year, but every single starter for Ohio State's defense will get drafted. It might not be this year, but every single one will be drafted. And some of these guys are juniors. Jermaine Matthews. He'll have an NFL decision to make after this year. So Kenyatta Jackson, same thing. But I think that with Igbinosun, I'm glad you brought his name up because he played really well last week, and he's someone that was dinged a lot last year because of all the penalties, and rightfully so. That physicality is still part of his game. It's just you have to either live with it or die with it. I mean, it's who he is. You have to be okay with it, or you just don't draft him because you're not going to coach it out of him. He is a physical player on the outside, and it's like I'm worried he's going to get whiplash for him because as soon as the play is over, he's immediately looking for the ref to see if they threw a flag because that's just it's part of his game. But when you talk about a guy that's 6'1", has his length, and is going to run really well, that type of makeup, physical makeup, is what gets corners drafted in the first 2 rounds. And so Igbinosun certainly could get drafted that high. On the defensive line, yeah, I mean Caden Curry, he reminds me a lot of, I don't remember John Simon, the former Ohio State defensive lineman, where it's he's short armed and doesn't really have what scouts covet in an edge rusher at the next level, but man, the motor is just nonstop, and he's gonna find a spot. He's gonna find a way to make a roster and do some things. So yeah, he'll be drafted somewhere probably in the middle rounds, somewhere early day 3. But yeah, this Ohio State defense is just loaded, and a lot of these guys are upperclassmen, and they've never beat Michigan, and so this means a lot to that squad. On the offense, Max Clare at tight end is someone that we probably don't talk enough about. He was in my preseason top 50 as tight end 2 behind only Kenyon Sadiq. And he hasn't been really an integral part of the passing offense. I mean, I've been kind of impressed with him.
How many college tight ends are integral parts of their college passing offense?
Yeah, not
That's
a ton.
The frustrating thing about watching college tight ends.
That's fair. And I mean, I think what we saw from him last week with both receivers out against Rutgers, he went over 100 yards receiving. So it's nice to know that you have a tight end like that who can have that type of impact. Now, we did have a fumble, and it wasn't all perfect for him, but he's a guy that I'm told will be sitting down and making, he's kind of like 50-50. He's not leaning one way or the other, but he's going to make a big decision about whether he goes pro, because he could be one of the first 3 tight ends drafted. I don't think he goes above Sadiq, but could he sneak into the top 50 as tight end 2? Yeah, it's on the table for him. So, he's another guy that I think we need to, we've talked about him before, but maybe not enough for where he'll eventually be drafted. And Michigan's got a good defense. And so Ernest Hausman, the linebacker, see, if what he can do against a tight end like that. Ohio State's run game, they're all underclassmen, but it'd still be a big part of this. So, I mean, there are so many NFL prospects in this game that will play a big part in what eventually happens at the end.
Here's my pitch. Ryan Day won a national championship. We don't have to indulge any of the silliness about firing him if he can't beat Michigan. But
right.
if Michigan loses, or if Ohio State loses to Michigan again, then Ohio State hires a closer, like a closing coach, where like when Ryan Day's done beating Rutgers in mid-November, they just like pat their arm and bring in the closing coach against Michigan. Because I'm not trying to be too dismissive of Michigan, but come on, guys. You can't, this team should not be losing this game, especially for a 5th straight year. So maybe we just experiment with like a coach who can get them over the finish line just for 1 week, and then Ryan Day can be coach again.
Well, and I think that it's funny because you see the way that some of these losses have played out, and then you see how Ohio State has attacked some of those weaknesses in the offseason. So, when Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum were running all over them and JJ McCarthy didn't have to do all that much, it's like, all right, well, we got to bulk up on defense. We have to get better on defense. And they did that last year. They held Michigan to what? Was it 17-10 game? But on offense, they tried to out physical Michigan in the trenches. And the strength of that Michigan defense was in the interior, where they had 2 top 15 picks with Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. So, I think that in this game, I'm interested to see how Ryan Day wants to play it, where, like you said, he won a national championship. Like, yeah, you have to get the monkey off your back in terms of beating Michigan, but don't listen to the narratives where you feel like you have to win a certain way. Just play to your strengths and, go win a football game. And so it'll be interesting to see how this game plays out and how Ryan Day coaches it without he feels pressure, no doubt about it, but without the pressure that, we thought at this time 364 days ago, where, they had just lost and Columbus was on fire because they lost to a team they shouldn't have at home. And even though they were going to still make the playoffs, no one really cared at that point. So yeah, this is going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I think the spread is, I mean, if I'm a betting man, I'm feeling good about Michigan at least covering that, if not outright winning it. So it's not easy to go to Ann Arbor and win. So especially with a young quarterback and injury questions at receivers. So this is going to be a fun one.
The great thing about rivalry week is that Ohio State, like, they're in the playoff. They won the championship coming from deep, like coming from outside the bracket anyway. Like, they didn't have a bye last year. They're going to be in position to do it again, even if they lose this game. But if they do, Columbus will be on fire again anyway. It will not matter. None of that crap will matter if they cannot get over this hump. And that is why this is such a special weekend.
You think the state of Michigan wants to take it to Matt Patricia one more time? After what happened in Detroit? I mean, like,
yes. Just what a great wrinkle. What a great wrinkle.
Exactly. Add another one to it. Why not?
Plenty of other action on Saturday after Ohio State, Michigan, Dane. Namely, for me, and like the stakes they're not equally high because it has been a very forgettable season for the Auburn Tigers. They fired Hugh Freeze. But the Iron Bowl, obviously, we know it's one of the best rivalries in college football. Alabama with plenty to play for. Ty Simpson trying to get off the schneid that he's been on ever since you and I professed our love for him a couple weeks ago. But I'm also interested in this because, like I said, this is truly an opportunity where if you're looking at big time prospects in this class, potentially playing their final game, Auburn's got quite a few of those guys, and none more visible than Kendrick Faulk, who unanimously seen as one of the biggest prospects in this draft class. If Auburn doesn't win this game, he doesn't even have a choice about opting out of a bowl. They won't make a bowl. So a lot of reasons to care about this from both sides, even if Auburn is a little bit lackluster from a record standpoint.
Yeah, probably the last time we'll see Kendrick Faulk in a college game. So very eager to see him and how he goes out, especially when he goes up against left tackle Caden Proctor. That'll be a treat to watch those two guys go at it. Faulk, he's going to be a polarizing player because he has more almost plays than impact plays on his tape. And that's going to be an issue and understandably so, I get it. But his traits say he's top 10 and he's the youngest player in the draft. So I still think there will be more than a few teams lining up to draft this guy, develop him, and take him pretty early in this class. Opposite him, Kieran Crawford, he's had a really nice senior year. Someone that scouts are always bringing up to me as, we hear you talking about Faulk, but talk about this guy as well. 6'4", 250, ripped, impressive guy when he steps on the scale, but he also plays like that. High effort, big time competitor. Scouts really like him. But kind of how you set it up and mentioned it, this is to me a Ty Simpson game because it's, we talked about it when my top 50 came out. The first 2 months of tape from Simpson this year, really impressive audition to be quarterback one and be a top 10 pick. Then November happened and it's been rocky. 3 interceptions just the last 2 games. He had another fumble. I'm still really impressed by the pocket movement and the way he gets through his reads, but there are times where the placement is just a tick off. And with his willingness to give his targets a chance, a little off can be a disaster at times. And so this is a game that, are we going to see the more of the early season Simpson, or are we going to see the November Simpson? Seeing how he bounces back from a roller coaster last 2 or 3 weeks, that's going to be a key part of his evaluation and a key part of probably his decision-making process about, do I go back to school or do I declare as part of the 2026 class? And so I think it just feels like there's a lot riding on this performance from Ty Simpson in the Iron Bowl.
This is also in Auburn, and do not let the 5-6 record fool you. That will be a hostile environment. Going 6-6, but messing up Alabama's season would have those folks plenty happy. So I expect a rowdy environment. It's usually a very competitive game when the game is in Auburn, no matter what the record is. So I'm pumped for this. And yeah, like I want to see Ty Simpson handle that environment against a defense with some NFL juice on that side of the ball. I think even if this is only a 5-6 team, I think this will be a big test for him. Let's take it out to the West Coast. I love this because, like, of course, Thanksgiving weekend, like, I'd love to see the Apple Cup happening in Washington. But if you're not going to do that because the Pac-12 doesn't, it ceased to exist the way we grew up with it. But at least you've got Washington playing Oregon. Like, at least you've got a rivalry game with some juice to wrap up the season. And I love this for a couple reasons. I've mentioned on this show several times, Denzel Boston and Jonah Coleman are 2 of my favorite prospects that I've seen so far. Love watching those guys. This could potentially be their last big game if they're gone to the NFL. And then a road game for Oregon going to Seattle. Again, what better spot could you ask for Dante Moore? Oregon probably makes the playoff anyway, but I mean, the Big Ten title game is still in play for them. They need a little bit of help to get there, but a lot to play for Oregon. Husky Stadium, very raucous place to play. I'm curious to see how he handles that. But yeah, again, a couple really fun Washington prospects to watch in a big spot too.
Yeah, it's funny. I think Oregon would like to win the Big Ten, but I think they'd be okay with skipping the Big Ten championship
Brother,
this year. And it's a
conference
problem,
title,
right?
Conference title games are dead. I know they're never going to get rid of them because the ratings are too good, but like, we got to do something about this.
For the Big Ten and the SEC, yes. Now, for the other conferences, you win and you're in the playoff. So there's more stakes in the ACC, Big 12. But SEC and
a good point. But the 2 leagues that are going to produce the most playoff teams, right, and have the most NFL talent,
the champion.
Everybody's looking at the conference title game like, what do you mean we got to go play another game? And that's not the way it's supposed to be.
It could be the difference between getting a bye or playing in the first round of the playoffs. So there are still some stakes involved here.
And I know that it's not the same. It's just not.
It's not. And that's why I said I think Oregon, they won the Big Ten last year and got a bye, and then they got boat raced by Ohio State in the second round of the playoffs. So this year, I think they'd be fine with missing the Big Ten championship game and then playing whatever opponent they get. Maybe it's Tulane, maybe it's, I don't want to disparage other teams, but maybe it's a team that they're very likely to win and go into round 2 of the playoffs with a little bit of more momentum. So yeah, this is a game where Washington it seemed like when Kalen DeBoer was there, they had a good stranglehold on this rivalry. Michael Penix was a big part of that. And then last year, you could tell it kind of shifted where Washington loses a lot of their dudes. Oregon still has their dudes. And that's probably still going to be the case this year. And a lot of what we said about Ty Simpson you can kind of say about Dante Moore, where it's, this is a big performance in terms of where are you in your development and how seriously should you be considering going pro. Dante Moore is very much in the QB1 discussion. I think that there's a lot of things working against him in his age, his lack of starts. And it's something that he has to think very honestly about in terms of how much development does he still feel like he needs. But how he performs in a game like this and then in the playoff, I think that'll go a long way to ultimately what decision he makes about going pro or going back to school. So that'll be a big one. You mentioned Jonah Coleman, very eager to see him go against Bryce Betcher, the Oregon linebacker, who I think the Astros are going to be pissed when Betcher ends up going to the NFL, because I just scouts like Betcher too much, I think, to let him get away. But yeah, Denzel Boston, can they get those one-on-one matchups with him and then give him chances to go make plays above the rim? So yeah, hopefully this is I think Oregon wins regardless, but hopefully it's at least a closer game going into the fourth quarter.
I really enjoy that Ty Simpson and Dante Moore are going to wrap their seasons up with big road games against teams with talent. Like, I think that's a nice way to wrap this regular season up, even if both of those guys go on to play in the playoffs and whatever. 11 a.m. Saturday, the records are not impressive. Clemson, South Carolina is a building the beast showcase, as far as I'm concerned. Like, two teams that thought they would be doing a hell of a lot better, but Peter Woods and TJ Parker going against LaNorris Sellers. Like, what else could you want? This was the game that kind of put LaNorris Sellers on the, it didn't put him on the radar because obviously people knew who he was, but like for the casual fan and for the NFL fan that's hunting for quarterback prospects, this game really jumped out for LaNorris Sellers. So not where we thought we would be with either of these teams, but plenty of reason to have an eye on it on Saturday morning.
There's a big question hanging over this game. Is this the final time we see LaNorris Sellers in a Gamecocks uniform? Obviously this season has not gone according to plan, both for the quarterback and then just the team as a whole. So we could talk about it more another time about, is it the quarterback's fault? Is it the supporting cast's fault? Mixture of both. How much blame are we going to, we could talk about that another time, but this is one last time for LaNorris Sellers to go out there this season and put up something that is an impressive performance. He last week against Coastal Carolina, it's kind of a get right game. He had 4 touchdowns, 2 passing, 2 rushing, but watching the tape back, it really wasn't that impressive of a performance, at least as a passer. So going up against a Clemson defense that has been much maligned this year, but we know they still have dudes, Peter Woods, TJ Parker, Avion Terrell, Will Held, Wade Woodaz. I mean, they've got guys that are going to be playing on Sundays next year or the year after. So what can Sellers do in this game to potentially change some of the negative narratives out there on him? And, how will that shape what decision he makes after this game about going pro, transferring, staying put? It just feels like how this game plays out could, directly influence what ultimately that decision is.
He had 330 total yards in last year's win against a Clemson team that made the playoffs, and
including the game winner. I mean, that was the fourth quarter was awesome.
If he does that again, and Peter Woods, TJ Parker, Avion Terrell at cornerback, like, there's plenty of talent on this Clemson team, even if their record is underwhelming. If he does that again, I'm curious to see the effect that it has on the conversation we're having about LaNorris Sellers. I'm only gonna watch half of the LSU Oklahoma game, Dane. I'm gonna flip away whenever LSU's on offense, because I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But LSU's defense going against John Mateer and Oklahoma with OU trying to play their way into a playoff spot, I do think that's worth watching. Our guy Mansour Delane named as a Thorpe finalist on Tuesday morning. Very exciting.
Just give it to him.
So it's Caleb Downs and Leonard Moore, who are both
really good,
big time players on playoff teams. Like, I don't feel good about my guy Delane winning over them, but I will passionately defend him anytime.
Speaks to Delane that he on a defense that has been really up and down, and lost season and still being recognized as he should for how good he has been this year. But yeah, I mean, is Whit Weeks back? Do we know for this game, or is
they put, so there's 3 Weeks brothers on LSU's roster, and they put Whit out there for a series against Western Carolina last week with his brothers, and it felt very ceremonial. It felt very like,
right,
oh, let's
symbolic?
let him have this moment. I think I'd be pretty surprised if he's playing in this game.
So do we think that he's leaving after this year then?
You know what? LSU is probably best put on a shelf until the weekend, and we'll figure out what the hell's going on with the coaching
Sorry.
nonsense. You know, if a certain other SEC coach winds up coaching LSU, then maybe Whit Weeks will want to hang around. I have no idea. I don't know what to do with LSU, other than I know that I don't want to watch their offense play football anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we do know it's probably the last game, or not probably, but maybe the last game for Harold Perkins.
Perkins, I'm not trying to sell anybody that they're big time picks, but there are several interesting players on LSU's defensive line worth
AJ
watching.
Halsey,
AJ
at
Halsey, phenomenal
safety.
player.
Yeah. So yeah, they're definitely guys that, for our purposes in terms of prospects, worth watching. And Oklahoma's offense has been really spotty. I mean, Mateer has been, since coming back from that injury, it's been rough for him, at least through the air. I mean, he still uses his legs, and that dual threat ability is a big part of what helps Oklahoma put points on the board. But yeah, this Oklahoma defense, it's going to be tough for LSU to put, get first downs and really get past. I mean, does LSU score more than 17 points in this game?
LSU hasn't scored more than 23 points all year. Period.
Is that real? Oh my
Or
god!
excuse, against Power 4 competition.
Okay.
So like
Okay.
not counting the Renta wins. So no,
Yeah.
I think the answer to your question is no. I think this is going to be a mud fight. It's going to be disgusting. I can't wait.
Yeah. And like you said, Oklahoma's playing to get into the playoffs, so they've got a little bit more to play for than this Tiger squad.
I was asked by a listener, Dane, to ask you to revisit one Diego Pavia and whether opinions are changing about his draftability. He just had a 500-yard. I believe he finished with 6 touchdowns against Kentucky. Yeah, 6 touchdowns, 500 scrimmage yards to beat Kentucky in the Heisman conversation. And I love Vandy playing Tennessee in Knoxville. You talk about Texas A&M being in a weird spot as the favorite against Texas. How about Tennessee being the team trying to spoil a Vanderbilt season? I don't know that I've ever said that in my life.
I don't think anybody's ever said that in their lives. This is a Tennessee defense that, and when you just look at it, the offense led by Pavia and Eli Stowers, it looks like a mismatch. But Tennessee has some dudes on defense. Arian Carter at linebacker. This guy is playing with turf toe on both feet. And he's still he missed a few games. He was out there against Florida last week making plays. He is second behind only CJ Allen in the SEC in tackles per game. His reaction speed, the instincts, they just jump off the screen with him. So, he's one of those guys that will, I think he's 50-50 on whether he comes out or goes back to school. But, even though he's hurt, he will have a big impact on how this game plays out. But yeah, I mean, Pavia, he has not done enough, I think, through the air to convince teams that he's draftable. But all it takes is one team. All it takes is one team to buy into the competitor and what he can bring to an offense. And so I'm not going to say it's impossible that he gets drafted, but just talking to scouts that are going through Vanderbilt, they're not just stamping, oh yeah, definitely draftable grades on him. But like you said, a game like this where it's not play and you're in, because Vanderbilt still needs a little bit of help. But if they win, they've got a decent reasoning to say we belong in this playoff conversation. And Pavia, how he performs, could win him the Heisman. It's Jeremiah Love, to me, is what he's done this season. He belongs as not the front runner, close to it, But if Pavia goes out there and puts up a big number in a tough place to play like Neyland, that would go a long way and gets Vanderbilt into the playoff. My gosh. I think it's also interesting too, not to talk too much about the Heisman, but it used to be you had all week starting on Monday and then all week to vote. They changed it. So now you don't get there's 1,000 people that vote. You don't get your ballot until like Saturday night of conference championship game. And then you have like 48 hours. It's basically forcing you to not vote ahead of time. You have to watch the conference championship games. And that's something that favors, obviously, the guys that are playing on championship weekend, the Julian Sayins, the Fernando Mendozas, whoever else ends up playing on conference champion weekend. And that could potentially hurt a Diego Pavia. So this is a big game for him to go out there and kind of, one last say why he should win the award.
I actually love that. And I mean, it does suck that the guys that play in a conference title game get to make a last impression, but that's still better than a lazy
100%.
voter deciding who should win the award 2 weeks ahead of time, which used to happen with alarming regularity.
No doubt.
I think I said this last time we talked about Pavia. He's going to be a day 3 pick that like some teams just like not going to want to fight for him. And that's what you have to do when a guy goes undrafted. And I can see that of him being like a 5th to 7th round pick, culture guy,
possible
developmental
definitely.
guy. I will
especially
not
when
be surprised.
coaches get involved in the process.
Yeah, dude.
And, they meet him and talk to him and say like, oh, this is my spirit animal. I want him on my team. I want him in my quarterback room. Like, that is something that even though scouts are not, like I said, scouts are not coming away like, oh, this guy's draftable. Once coaches get involved, that could definitely tip the scale.
Such a great note. And I can't wait to talk about that when the coaches sit down and they're like, oh no, we need this guy. Anyway, two more to get to quickly. I love that we're highlighting North Carolina State. Lot of bragging rights on the line. Two not very successful teams this year, but North Carolina State in particular does have 2 guys that you've been a fan of throughout the season.
Yeah, Justin Jolie, the tight end, he was a 190-pound wide receiver who couldn't get recruited anywhere. Nobody wanted to take a chance on him. Goes to UConn, moved him to tight end, puts on weight. Now he's 250 pounds and still moving, similar to the way he looked at 190 pounds and just making plays. I mean, watching him against Florida State, he had the game-sealing touchdown. You just kind of throw it in his zip code and he comes down with it. He's not... I wouldn't go as far as to say a top 50 guy, but he's right there in that mix to be the first senior drafted, somewhere in that 50 to 100 range. He's competing with Eli Stowers and some of these other guys to be tight end 2, tight end 3, tight end 4. But Jolie is awesome. And if I'm NC State, I'm targeting him 10 times a game. I don't know why they don't. And then Hollywood Smothers at running back is a big play waiting to happen. I mean, he could help this running back class. I don't think he goes in the first 2 rounds, but rounds 3 and 4, that'll probably be the sweet spot this year for your Justice Haynes, your Jonah Coleman's, that next tier of running backs after Jeremiah Love.
Nothing better. That's my sweet spot. I'm trying to spend starting with like pick 70 and going to like pick 105. That's where I want to take my running back. So if you're telling me that, then I am interested in Mr. Hollywood Smothers. One last one before we get out of here. Miami going to Pitt. Hurricanes. It's looking dicey for their playoff odds, but they are still mathematically alive. One more chance to put a good win on their resume and hopefully catch the right breaks to get in. If they don't, though, and no offense to any Hurricane fans, that's what's potentially interesting to me is even with a win here, they could win this game and get locked out of the playoff, whether fair or unfair. And so for a Ruben Bain, for a Francis Maui-Noa, this could be their last meaningful game, college game. It could be their last game in a Miami uniform. So even if I don't love Miami's playoff odds, I do want to tune in to see that.
Yeah, I'm going to watch this game not caring at all about the playoffs and what it means. And like, I don't care. I just want to see, these Miami players knowing it could be the final time they're playing together, whether it be Carson Beck, whether it be Ruben Bain and the guys on the defensive line. How do they go out? Do they go out putting the best possible product on the tape? Or do they kind of mess around a little bit? And it's, because I do think that the talent on this team should get them in the conversation to be in the playoff. It's just, can they go out there and play like it? I think they have the last few weeks. It feels like they know they have to put up style points, and they've done that. But I want to see.
They were
Carson
overtly
Beck,
trying to put up style points against Virginia Tech last week.
Yeah. And I think everybody knows that. And I get why, whether or not it matters, who knows, but why not? And this will be another game where Pitt, their rankings nationally on the defensive side of the ball, it's taken some hits, especially after that Notre Dame game, but it's still a pretty decent defense, and they're well coached. And so I want to see, from an evaluation standpoint, Carson Beck, what does he do against this defense? I want to see, can Ruben Bain go out with a 3-sack night, that type of thing. So yeah, there's still a lot, even not caring at all about the playoffs, just the evaluation of these prospects. I think there's still plenty to learn from these guys.
Underrated subplot: Mario Cristobal coaching against Pat Narduzzi almost guarantees some silly situational thing is going to happen. Like whether it's clock management or a weird 4th down decision, one of these coaches is going to do something insane.
You're not wrong. And that's not that either of these guys are on the hot seat or anything, but it's just, you are going into the off season with a fan base that is pissed and let down, and you have to hear about it for months. And so, neither team wants that to happen. And so, yeah, there's just, this feels like a matchup that is, it's not a rivalry per se, but it just feels like there's a little bit, you don't want to be a loser in this one, put it that way.
The stakes are high all over the country. I cannot wait for all of this to play out. Cannot wait to chat with you about it, not only over the weekend, Dane, but when we reconvene to reassess it all. One of the best weekends of the year. On a serious note, before we get out of here, man, I'm very thankful to be back talking ball and talking draft with you. It's been a delight. And this is the end of the regular season, but it's just the beginning for us, man. I can't wait to really crank the dials up on the draft process.
I mean, this is one of my favorite hours of the week because it's a chance to really talk about scenarios and prospects and evaluations. And it's crazy that we're going to be out of tape soon. Like with this, we're at the end of the regular season. And so next week, my first mock draft comes out, which is kind of crazy. So yeah, we've got plenty, even though the games are ending, we still got a lot to talk about and continue this conversation as we get closer and closer to draft weekend.
It's getting real. Until then, we hope y'all have a very happy, very safe, productive Thanksgiving weekend. We will be back to chat about all of the fallout from Rivalry Week next time on Building the Beast. Talk to y'all soon.
Thanks for watching. Follow The Athletic Football Show wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube.